the other issue I wanted to get to was and I was sharing this with my classes this week, my Black Studies classes, particularly my Intro to Black Studies classes, because what has been, what is one of the themes of, I don't have it with me here, Abdul Al-Kalimat's History of Black Studies book, which we're using as the text. And one of the themes that I certainly want to develop with the course is that Black Studies started as efforts. No, they're meant to be thumbs up. Black Studies on the one primarily started as extra institutional efforts by African people to develop new ways to analyze, interpret, and radically respond to their condition. And it was the broader movements around the world and here in the United States for Black liberation and anti-colonial struggle that forced, in some cases at gunpoint, Black Studies into the North American so-called higher educational academic university settings. And as I at least interpreted, and my bias is that with the foresight of empire, those in power said, we will concede in this moment and allow you to establish these programs, departments, we'll give you some autonomy, centers, give you even more autonomy. And then we will, over time, whittle that away. We have the foresight again of empire. We have the plan and ever the intent to stay here, to stay in power. We know at the end of the day, whatever guns you used to influence the development of Black studies on campuses here in the U.S., we have more, and we're more willing than you to use them. So if necessary, we know that's the reality. But more than likely, we know that over a 50-year period, we can, over time, through diversion of funds, influences of hire, manipulation of class interest, and so on and so forth, we can whittle away and manipulate these programs and departments and even centers back to compliance within the dominant institution. So that has been the ever-present struggle of Black studies. And I even wrote on the board yesterday a variety. I said, I was trying to just basically write oversimplified categories of because Al-Kalimat does this, he does what is really important in the book. He says there are 3 questions that Black studies has always attempted to answer. What is the condition of Black people? What can Black people learn from past struggles? And what is the best way for Black people forward to correct the conditions facing Black people? So I wrote on the board just broad categories. I said, broadly speaking, there's cultural nationalism, and then centering what I was going to what we're going to look at here today. I said and again, forgive me because I know we have many real experts here, but remember, this is an introductory class where most of what we're talking about will not actually be read and studied, at least now. So bear with me on this. So I was saying, broadly speaking, there's cultural nationalism, sort of a vague, undefined or ill-defined or underdefined appreciation of Blackness, pan-Africanism, with, again, just sort of an appreciation of Blackness and symbol and cultural expression. And then I said, as an offshoot of that, there is Afrocentricity, which was developed primarily in the 80s by Molefi Asante. He now calls it Africology at the University of Temple, where he just developed the first Black Studies PhD, and where, as we're going to look at here, there's an ongoing struggle. I said there is a variety of nationalisms, revolutionary nationalism, a variety of socialism and Marxism, Marxist approaches, as just broadly defined categories. And I said, but my point was, all of them in one way or another, find themselves in direct contradistinction or hostility or are antithetical to the mission of the university here in the United States, even the Black university, maybe even especially the Black university, that their missions are not to develop any variety of critical radical. And I said what all of these different categories have in one form of agreement or another is that a variety of white supremacy and capitalism and colonialism are an issue. All of which is antithetical to what is by design of interest to the institutions here, the university system in particular in the United States. So within that, I was saying that wherever you find yourself, whatever bias you prefer, and we talked a little bit about the classic debate between Kwame Ture and Molefi Asante, which I'm going to assign for them this week. Where whenever I watch it, I think Kwame Ture wins hands down. But to be truthful, overwhelmingly over the years, my students have felt that Molefi Asante's argument is the stronger one, and we struggle with that, and we go back and forth. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, what we have to be fair about and realize is that whatever our bias or preferences or whatever we think is the correct analysis, none of it is welcomed by any of these institutions, including, unfortunately, Black ones. So when this story, now, if you remember a while ago, we covered some of the discrepancy with Professor iMWiL and Molefi Asante at Temple University, where they have, over the years, developed increasing disagreements over the approach to Afrocentric study, how it's to be defined. And as I think we'll see a little bit today, the crux has become part of it. And we talked about it when Professor Asante and Na Dove came here to talk about their book. Well, they came not here, but they came over to iMWiL on BPM to talk about the Being Human book. And there was this apparent welcoming or affinity, maybe not affinity is too strong a word, but an inclusiveness of the LGBTQ community. And this became, for iMWiL and others, an issue. So we've covered some of that here. And so here again, it's cropping up, but within the context of the broader struggle that Asante is apparently having with his Africology department and Temple University. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I do want to play some of what came out in the video and then share a little bit. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do it the other way. Let's start with the article first. So let me pull that up here. So I thought I had that. I got the wrong thing. Do that all the time. Let's see. Molefi Asante, Philadelphia Tribune. So there was a story. Dang. Oh, you know where I put it? I know where I put it. My fault. That's why I thought I had it over here. Because this I did assign to the students to read, my students to check out, to read this article and then to watch the video, so they could see in real time what is actually happening here. So I'll pull this story. Was in the Philadelphia Tribune a couple of days ago. Is Temple University maliciously destroying its own Africology and African American Studies department? And there you see pictured Dr. Molefi Asante. Many Black professors, undergraduate students, and graduate students. Many Black professors, undergraduate students, and graduate students at Temple University have accused Temple University in general and College of Liberal Arts Dean Richard Deeg in particular of blatant racism at worst and racial insensitivity at best. They say that Deeg, a white man, continues to attempt to destroy the Africology and African American Studies department by spitefully denying essential resources, by impugning the AAASD's scholarly pro-Black philosophy, and by writing hostile correspondence vilifying Black professors who dare to challenge what some describe as his plantation mentality. And although no one has accused him of whipping Black professors, some are accusing him of attempting to destroy their careers by unjustifiably denying tenure or reappointment. So that's, I'll put the link if it's not already there in the show description. That's the broad overview of what is going on here. And I will play a little bit of Professor Asante's video that he posted the other day in response to this issue, where you can hear him. I think he started about right there. Hear him summarize some of the issue, and then I want to forward it a little bit to hear from one of his students. Some of you may know her as Feminista Jones on Twitter, who is just about to, I think, just finishing her doctorate there, and has something to say on this as well. So let me just play a little bit of this, and then we'll come back in a minute.
To throw some light on this issue, because this issue plagues a part of the African American and African community that we don't usually consider, because most of our concentration is not on those who are in professional careers. So if you see videos about African Americans or about racism, normally you're talking about people who are engaged in the community with the police, or people who are having difficult times with housing and poverty and so forth. But what people forget is that the American society is a unitary society, in the sense that the fundamental ideals that drive the society are ideals that we find almost in every sector. And I just want to say that I'm very happy today to have Dr. Aaron Smith and Dr. Nadav join with me in this conversation. And this is a conversation actually that needs to happen for the Malefikenti Asante Institute subscribers. And our subscribers, as some of you know, are all over the world, and we have hundreds of them. And we ask you to spread this information as far and as wide as you would like to. I want to start off, if Dr. Jabali, Dr. Aaron Smith, and Dr. Dove would permit me to sort of give a general overview of what we're facing at Temple University, and then they will certainly be able and willing, I'm sure, to add comments to what I have to say. Let me just say that the Department of Africology,
and without falling into the American fiction of it all, I do think he actually makes an important point that I am at least biased and sensitive to, that for all that is discussed of the by necessity of the horrific conditions facing Black people in this country and elsewhere, one aspect of the suffering that by you know, I think it's legit that gets less appreciation is for those who are in I forgot how he put it, but in professional, so-called professional part of the professional labor class, so to speak, or the in this case the academic community. It's again, relatively speaking, I get it, but it is one aspect that gets, I think, underappreciated. And then when we often hear of the academy experience as being one of ivory tower scholars, and we don't fully understand what's happening to folks, even among those with whom we have serious disagreements. But so I just, because again, when it came to protecting Anthony Montero, all arguments were at the time that Asante himself was not defending Montero and was willing to let the non-Afrocentric Du Boisian communist be excised from the university. So I could see why some would feel like, well, why should anybody have any affinity for Asante or his department? But I think that that's really secondary to the broader argument about what's happening to Black studies or what happens to academics within these institutions. But I'm open for criticism on that. I just want to throw that in there real quick. Okay, let me just keep this going.
Africology, and which is the name of the discipline for us. And African American studies started in the late 60s by a group of very courageous students at Temple University. They were all undergraduate students. And they fought and got this program started. And then in the 1980s, I came to Temple, and my name is Malefikete Asante, for those of you who do not know. I came to Temple, and we started actually a program to create a master's and a PhD in African American studies. Initially, it was a master's, but when they rejected the master's proposal, I decided I would just go for the master's and the PhD. But at any rate, it was done, and it was approved and by the Board of Trustees at that time, and it was considered the first. It is the first PhD program in the United States of America in African American studies, and it's the only one that still maintains the notion of discipline. There are many other programs now. There are about 16 or 17 other programs, but almost all of them, or at least many of them, have what I call dual discipline projects. That is, you have to take, if you go to Harvard, for example, you want to get a PhD in African American studies, you also have to take English, or you have to take sociology or political science or religion and that kind of thing. So, and there are many people who follow that model. We didn't follow that model because our idea was that that what we were studying was not just the facts, but it was how we studied African people and the African world.
Gotta respect that.
We created a discipline.
Dr. Turner was down with that too.
Now, at the present time, we have 9 faculty members, and 4 of them are males and 5 of them are females. And I was chair when everybody was hired. In fact, outside myself, I hired everybody in the department. So my term as chair ended 2 years ago.
Doc, make sure you let the people in the waiting room, or you can make me a host, and I'll make sure.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I thought we were the only ones here. Okay.
No, people are waiting, but I can do that for you.
All right, so I think wonderful. Now, because I want to do this, I think.
Cool. You might want to.
You are now the host, and we are 5 females and 4 males.
Talking about the faculty in the Africology department.
Over the last few years, 8, 9 years, we have requested from the university positions, lines, and when we did not get them, each year we asked the current dean of the College of Liberal Arts, who is Deeg. At some point, we were frustrated because we know that there are scores of students who would like to take our courses, but we are not able to offer a variety of courses that need to be offered. So when he denied.
And just quickly, real quick, just for those who are not aware, may need a reminder, just because he's going to talk a little bit about the hierarchy within these universities. So he's the chair, or was the chair of the department. I don't think he's the chair anymore. Usually chairs are within, or departments, chairs are chairs of departments, chairpersons of departments that are there with themselves within the College of Liberal Arts, which has its dean. So Dean Deeg would be his direct, at the time he was the chair, would have been his direct supervisor. The deans usually then report to a provost, who then reports to the president, something basically like that. And then courses have to be ultimately, new courses, new departments, new programs have to ultimately usually be signed off on by some overarching state body. So some of that's going to come into play with what we're going to see here. I just wanted to quickly outline that, because if I remember correctly, what we're going to see is the part we're going to see. He's going to talk about some of the conflict with that chain of command. So currently, he's talking about the conflict with his immediate supervisor at the time, Dean Deeg.
Denied us the opportunity to hire faculty members. After the death of George Floyd, I wrote the university a very strong letter to the president, and it was circulated widely that Temple needed to respond like other corporations and institutions had responded to the murder, which was an indication of racism and white supremacy in the American society. Temple's president at the time was Richard Engler, and he responded admirably because he responded to saying that the department could have the 4 positions that I had asked for, and that the university would also participate in helping to create the Center for Anti-Racism. And in addition to that, it would reach out to the local North Philadelphia community and offer more opportunities for students in the North Philadelphia area to attend Temple. So this was a good move, but the move was not appreciated by the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. In fact, the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts accused me of insubordination by going directly to the president for this. But I've always felt that in my position as a university professor, I was not on a plantation. I picked cotton. I know what it is to pick cotton and to work on plantations and work on farms and to have some ignorant white person assume that they know more than you just because they have a position. And because that happened to me in Georgia when I was growing up.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there. I'll make sure all the links are in the show description so if everybody can see the whole thing if they want. The entire video is about 30 minutes. And I want to play one other part of it here in a second. But I wanted to just start with that as an outline of what the sort of initial conflict was. And that last point he was making, I think, is important because when Professor Asante describes, he said he was a university professor. And again, for anybody who's not aware, again, sort of the standard hierarchy, I guess, is you have your lecturer and adjunct professors, assistant, associate, full professor, and then you can ascend in some cases to what is called a university professor, which is where you're basically considered such an expert that you can't be categorized, and that your, if I'm not mistaken, your tenure is sort of just associated broadly with the university as opposed to just one department or school or field. And I remember at one point in my own personal struggles in trying to find well, Dr. Bo, we're just trying to find a place for you. I actually suggested, I said, well, why don't you just make me a university professor and allow me to set up my own thing and do my own thing? And they were like, nah. Now, Asante is somebody who, again, whatever anybody might think, has I think earned, with his level of publication and his contribution, he's earned something like that for sure. I think, despite my own relative sense of self-importance, I think the argument could be made that I had not quite attained that level. I think you could probably make that argument. But I did say, we could just, why don't we just solve it like that, So anyway, but that's what he meant. So he was so he's saying, look, and he's earned it, I would think. At this level, why do I have to go through X, Y, Z? Why can't I just talk straight to the president? But he was actually harassed for that. And by the way, when we were talking the other day again on iMWiL, and when I talked previously about Dr. Candia Bailey and what led to her taking her own life, I mean, this is a version of what I'm talking about. Even somebody at Asante's level, and he goes on to talk more about it, he's got people demeaning his career, he's got people demeaning his program, he's got white men in particular demeaning. He reflects at one point that someone, another administrator had told him that his previous attempts to bring greater relationships with the continent of Africa to Temple University, that was not necessary because Africa has nothing to offer Temple University. So again, I get it. We're talking about academia. We're talking about, in his case, high level academia. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any number of set of microaggressions, hostilities, and struggles that people go through, and that sometimes, I think he's right, are under evaluated or considered when given so much of what obviously Black people face here and around the world is going on. This isn't at the top of the list, admittedly, but it is still going. It's still a thing. So I want to come back to play, because on the one hand, there is the issue, and this is what we were talking about in my class, there is the ongoing issue. So he's saying, see, these are all the things about the politics of the university that often don't get considered. When he was saying earlier about saying we wanted more lines, what he's saying is he wanted the university to give more positions to Africology where they could hire faculty, not just as temporary adjunct or lecturers, but hire people who would be tenure tracked, who would have benefits, who would have substantial salaries. And these are, again, highly favored and usually or valuable. And from what I've understood and seen how it works, the provost is largely in charge of distributing lines to all the different departments. There's obviously only so much given the budget, whatever their resources are, or however they want to allocate those resources. So again, in my own instance, I remember one of the issues that held me up from, at the time, getting moved over, and it ended up not becoming permanent, me moving over to, when I was trying to get out of the School of Communication and work with Ray Winbush in the Urban Institute over at Morgan. One of the things that kept being said to me was, we don't want in the School of Communication to give up the line you occupy. So unless you want to go over there, absent your tenure, absent your full professor, absent your benefits, and sort of start from scratch, you can't. So obviously, I wasn't going to do that. But that was how they can free people up or lock people in. That's how schools can be forced to compete with one another for how many lines. And then in some cases, if faculty do leave, the line will get shut down instead of replaced. So that's what he was talking about there. He's trying to get more lines, and the school is telling him no. They're trying to restrict who he can hire, how many he can hire. All right. So there's, on the one hand, there's the bigger struggle with the university that Black Studies programs, departments, centers have to deal with. Even in my one meeting with our president, he was looking at my resume, and he saw a Master's of Professional Studies from Cornell University in the Africana Studies and Research Center. And he asked me, was this a certificate? So there's this tendency in certain academic circles to demean even a Black Studies degree as having no value. So when Professor Asante was talking about the very important point of his department trying to maintain an independent, autonomous discipline, that there has been an argument within Africana Studies or Black Studies that Black Studies has its own epistemology, its own way of knowing, its own way of studying, its own methodology, its own theories. It doesn't need sociology. It doesn't need philosophy or psychology or mass communication, et cetera, and so forth. So that's always been part of the struggle. So when Asante is saying, I wanted to maintain that autonomy, that's always something seen as a threat by the broader institution, which does remember the historical origins of these Black Studies programs, even if many of the faculty and students themselves are not aware or don't care anymore. That it is meant to be an intellectual wing of the Black liberation struggle, that it is something that was forcibly pushed into these institutions and has always been, as Black people have often been seen as the intellectual insurgency. So they don't want you to be disconnected from sociology, and they don't want Black people thinking that there is their own way of knowing outside of the Western academy, especially if you're going to work within. Yeah, he said, is it a certificate? And I had to be like, I said, no, it's a 2-year high level intense degree. And meanwhile, with all due respect, it's just reality that those of us with PhDs we are bougie when it comes to looking at people with an ED or an EDD, that is an educational doctorate, a doctor of education, as opposed to a doctor of philosophy, which many university presidents get, because that's the terminal degree that folks get when they want to be administrators, as opposed to PhDs, which is what is often thought to be what you get when you want to be an intellectual or a scholar. And then there is this bougie thing about PhDs saying that so there was some of that. So I'm sitting there saying, not only do I have a PhD, and not only is my master's not just from, not only is it not a certificate, and not only is it from an Ivy League Cornell University, but it's really from the Africana Studies and Research Center under the tutelage of the founding director, the late great Dr. James Turner. And I'm but yeah, he said, what is this, a certificate? So my point is, there's this broader within academia sense of Black studies ain't really it. Even within other disciplines, it's not, seen as, it's often seen with a certain, and then, it does have a sort of political sort of, I don't know, label to it. Okay, so yeah, so I that's why I thought it was. So there's that struggle that Black Studies has with these institutions, the institution itself, the administration, often the funding, so on and so forth. But then, as I want to show a little bit here, later in the video, they bring up, and I actually can't remember her quote unquote government name, but on Twitter, she's known as Feminista Jones. She's somewhat of a popular activist, and she's here to. She's just finished her, I think she says she just submitted her dissertation. So she's basically a doctor now. And, but she shares a little bit of her experience within the Africology department there, but a struggle with the, I think, current chair, Dr. Amamazama, who, as I mentioned earlier, had a, and I don't know more of the details than what I shared, but a growing apart from Professor Asante. Some of which is you'll see, is based on his apparent expansion, too much of an expansionist approach to Afrocentricity. The point being that aside from the institution, there are these internal struggles that are taking place, that have always taken place within Black studies in one form or another, that are taking, at least in this one instance, or as claimed here, the form as you'll hear here.
I knew that I came here because I have admired Dr. Asante for so long, and wanting the opportunity to be able to be in this program that I'd heard so much about. And I did not expect to come here and have to deal with some of the things that I have dealt with. For those who are not familiar with me, I am openly a queer woman. I am very proud to be part of the LGBT community. I was raised by an activist mother. I was raised in a Black Power tradition. And so I did not think that coming here and just being myself, my open self, would warrant the kinds of treatments that I've had. My first semester, I was forced to sit in a class in which Dr. Mazama equated same-sex marriage to bestiality and pedophilia. And when I challenged that and I kind of called it out, since then, I feel like there's been a target on my back. And I feel like she'd gotten very comfortable saying things like that in her classes without pushback, perhaps because people may have been intimidated by her or afraid. But as someone who had already has an established career, I came in like totally unafraid, and I was not going to sit there and be subjected to being told that my humanity is not valued and that I couldn't become an ancestor because I'm queer, or that my existence is counter to African culture. Like, I just didn't understand that. And I found out that speaking up on behalf of my community and our community as African people led to microaggressions and treatment in which she tried to cost me my TA fellowship. She decided to trump up some things and make it seem like I didn't know how to put together a syllabus when really she couldn't actually read it. She brought in CAT to have them review my stuff. They said, this is fine, this is perfect, what is the problem? So I started dealing with those kinds of things. Then I blew the whistle and participated in an investigation. And ever since then, I've been subjected to retribution and microaggressions. It's gotten to the point where I just don't even want to talk to her because I'm not comfortable interacting and engaging with her, right? So right now, my award is being held hostage. And I understand, Dr. Asante, you mentioned that it could be because it's because of you. But I also want to let people be aware that I am openly queer. And these attacks on me, I believe, are tied into my identity, one that she believes is gross, disgusting, anti-African. And the fact that I'm committed to this, it seems like she has a problem with it. And so now my award is being withheld. And if I do not receive this money by the end of April, I will be suing the university because I was told I'm getting this award, I should be getting it, and she's standing in the way of it. These are the kinds of things I did not expect to deal with when I came here, but I'm also a world-renowned activist, and I don't think she realizes the lengths I will go to protect the students and the faculty here. I will speak up. I will do what I need to do, and Temple is going to regret ignoring the complaints that I have filed, and they've basically dismissed all the evidence that I've brought to them showing her harmful rhetoric. They've dismissed all of that, and they're going to regret that. And it's a shame that I have to go this way because part of why I didn't say anything to begin with, because I thought that we could deal with this as a community.
So that's just, again, you can watch her full comments and the rest of the video. I'll put the in the show description, but that encapsulates largely the issue there. And again, I can't, forgive me for doing this, but again, it resonates with me deeply, having a version of this happen to me for other reasons. But the point being that as soon as you are seen as a problem, the first thing they want to do is take that award money, that funding. And then they can say, because the what is it, the criteria, the standards of evidence necessary to take away your funding is much lower than to actually remove you as a student. So it's much more rare that you would be removed as a student, because they would have to show all kinds of failure to meet academic standards or whatever. But if you're sitting there with straight A's and they want to get rid of you, just take the money, and that's it. And then if you either struggle or more likely you have to leave. So, but the idea, and I get it, there are a lot of competing views on gender, sexuality, all kinds of things, religion, complexion, whatever. But in these academic spaces, there are so many different ways for you to share your bias without demeaning or hurting anybody. All you have to do is, for instance, is offer competing readings or debates. But the point is, it should always be, especially in these what are supposed to be Black studies spaces, the entire African world should feel comfortable, welcomed, safe, invited to engage. So that's disheartening to hear. One more piece from that article that I think is relevant to what we just heard there is that, and where these two prongs of struggle that I'm quickly oversimplifying here, that is internal and external to Black studies, is that it says here that Tribune story, apparently Dean Richard Deeg imposed a chairperson, Dr. Amma Manzama, with reckless disregard for the wishes of the majority of the department. Dr. Manzama has been found guilty of retaliation by the university, yet the chairperson and the dean remain in their positions. Well, that's wild. In my opinion, Dr. Manzama has allegedly done the following: weaponized law enforcement against faculty, engaged in false accusations of self-plagiarism against faculty, mishandled. That's another wild thing too, this issue of self-plagiarism. And if you watch the video, the way some of the details of that are that because apparently, allegedly, because of a misprint of an abstract in a journal article that didn't match the actual article that was beneath the abstract, accusations against faculty was that they were, if I have this correct, and again, check the video for, but the accusations, because of that error, accusations emerged that faculty were falsely or self-plagiarizing, that is, duplicating their work in multiple places without making that known. So in other words, you submit the same paragraph or argument or paper or pages from one book or one article to the next without saying I'm quoting myself from a previous source. And that is, I mean, that's just doing a lot if you really respect somebody and don't think that they're of if you really respect somebody and think they're of value, you would not go after them for that. Although at the same time, it's just so easy just to, whenever you, I'm not saying they did this, but I just am always very careful, just put a footnote, be like, I said this, or this is so. But my point here is that in referencing that paragraph is that part of the argument is that the autonomy of the department, that, and Asante goes into this, the bylaws apparently at Temple say that you're supposed to be able to, as a department, first of all, have bylaws which allow for you as a department to have some voice in your governance. And when the dean just says, no, you're the chair, without hearing the faculty, and in fact going against what a majority of the faculty want for their chair, it's an issue. So I'm going to keep paying attention to this story and make it part of the rest of the semester, because again, the history of Black studies sort of tracked in Al-Kalimat's book, and certainly in my biased interpretation of it, is that this is it. This is a perfect microcosm of all the issues. You have Afrocentricity itself has has its own controversial past in terms of the old arguments with Dr. Clark and others about what is Asante doing with Afrocentricity, who, Du Bois using the term, I believe in 1962, and yet it being credited largely to Asante with a very different politic. What about Black Marxism? What about other forms of nationalism? What about radical pan-Africanism and scientific socialism? What about that Kwame Ture versus Asante debate? All of these things. You have all of that going on within Black studies. You have this internal and increasingly internal struggle with sexuality and gender, and how is that being interpreted, and whose version, whose African-centered or Eurocentric approach is what? The ongoing beef that has gone on between various nationalisms and variations of Marxism, Black Marxism, the materialists. The whole NCBS takeover, as some have described it, where the Marxists and communists were all thrown out. I'm doing too much there, but largely, unspokenly, whatever, kind of, sort of, yeah. So I mean, you know, there's all that going on, but all of that's happening. It's just like the microcosm of the Black experience. All of these beefs are happening within the broader context of the colonizer looking to wipe us all out. So it's happening in the academic world as well as everywhere else.